What if no one ever chooses me? Not in a dramatic way, not the kind of thought you say out loud. It's the kind of thought that shows up quietly, late at night, when the room is too still and your mind won't stop. When you're lying there and the silence gets so loud, it starts asking questions you don't have answers to. What if I'm the person everyone likes but no one picks? What if I'm always the almost, the maybe, the not right now? What if choosing me is something nobody ever really does? And the worst part isn't even the thought itself, it's how familiar it feels, like it's been living in the back of your mind for a long time, like you've gotten so used to it that some nights you don't even fight it anymore. You just let it sit there, heavy and quiet, while the rest of the world sleeps. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being around people and still feeling invisible. It comes from being in someone's life but not really in their heart. You're there, you're present, you show up, but you're not the person they think about when something good happens. You're not the one they reach for when the day finally gets quiet, and that kind of loneliness is harder to explain because from the outside, nothing looks wrong. You have people, you have conversations, you smile and you laugh and you show up for everyone around you. But deep down, there's this ache, this quiet question that never fully goes away. Why am I always the one waiting to be chosen? You don't say it out loud. You probably haven't said it to anyone because saying it feels like admitting something you're not ready to admit. That maybe you've been hoping for something for a long time and it keeps not arriving, and you don't know if that's about timing or about you, and that uncertainty is its own kind of pain, so you carry it quietly, the way you carry most things. You start to notice a pattern after a while. You give a lot, you show up consistently, you remember the small things, you check in without being asked, you make time even when you don't have it. You care in ways most people don't even notice because you do it quietly, without keeping score, without expecting anything back, and somehow that still isn't enough. Somehow you still end up on the outside looking in, watching someone else get chosen, watching someone else become the person they stayed for, and you don't understand what they have that you don't because you're not bitter, you're not cold, you're not difficult to love. You're actually one of the easiest people to love if someone would just pay attention long enough to see it. You just haven't been loved the right way yet, and that difference matters. There's a big difference between being hard to love and being loved by the wrong people, between being too much and giving your heart to people who don't know how to hold it, between being unworthy and just being unseen. But at 2 a.m. when the room is quiet and the thought comes back, that difference is hard to hold on to because the mind does this thing. It takes every person who didn't choose you and lines them up like evidence, like proof of something, and it whispers, see, there's a reason, there has to be a reason, and you know that's not true. You know one person's inability to recognize you says nothing about your worth, but knowing something and feeling it are two very different things, and at night, feelings win, so you lie there, running through it all, the almost relationships, the people who came close but not close enough, the ones who made you feel chosen for a moment and then quietly stopped, the ones who said maybe and meant never, the ones who left without explaining why, and you wonder what would have happened if just one of them had stayed, just one. The hardest part isn't the rejection, it's what the waiting does to you slowly. It starts to change the way you see yourself, not all at once, just quietly over time, like water wearing down stone. You don't notice it happening until one day you look at yourself and realize you've started to believe things about yourself you never used to believe. That maybe you're too much, or not enough, or both at the same time somehow. That maybe something is fundamentally wrong with you that you can't see but everyone else can feel. That maybe the reason no one has chosen you yet is because the right person looked and decided to keep looking. And you hate that it gets to you. You hate that you let it. You're smarter than this. You know your worth doesn't come from being chosen. You know one person or 5 people or 10 people not picking you means nothing about what you deserve. You've told yourself this 100 times. But those words are easier to say than they are to believe at night when you're alone and the silence is doing all the talking. Sometimes you stop hoping, not because you've healed, but because hoping got too heavy. It's easier to tell yourself you don't want it than to keep wanting something that keeps not arriving. So you build a kind of quiet numbness around it, a wall that doesn't look like a wall. You tell people you're fine on your own. You say things like, I'm not really looking right now, and mostly you mean it, but then something small happens. A song comes on. A moment catches you off guard. You see two people together in an ordinary way, and something inside you aches for no reason you can explain, and it cracks open again. That wanting, that hope, that question you thought you'd finally made peace with. What if someone just chose me? Not because I convinced them, not because I waited long enough, not because they had no other options. What if someone just looked at me and chose me, fully, without hesitation, like I was the answer to a question they didn't even know they were asking? You don't want someone perfect. You've never wanted that. You just want someone consistent, someone who shows up even when it's inconvenient, someone who says your name like it matters, someone who notices when you go quiet, someone who asks what's wrong and actually waits for the real answer, someone who chooses you not just on the good days, but on the ordinary ones, the Tuesdays, the tired evenings, the moments that don't look like anything from the outside but feel like everything when you're in them. You want to be somebody's first thought and their last text, and the person they can't wait to tell things to. You want someone who sees you across a room and feels something, not because you're performing, not because you're trying, just because you're you. You want to be chosen not as a backup, not as an option, not as a maybe when nothing better comes along, but as the one, the actual one, the person someone looks at and thinks, yeah, it's you. It was always going to be you. And you wonder sometimes if wanting that makes you naive, if it's asking for too much in a world where most people are terrified of committing to anything fully, where everyone keeps their options open and calls it being smart, where choosing someone completely feels almost embarrassing, but then you think, no, that's not too much, that's the minimum, that's what love is supposed to feel like, that's what you deserve, not as a reward, not because you've earned it by waiting long enough or being good enough or patient enough, just because you're a person, and people deserve to be loved fully, even you, even on the nights when it's hardest to believe that. Underneath everything, though, there's a fear you don't say out loud. What if the problem is you? What if you're the common denominator? What if you love in a way that's too heavy, too real, too much for the kind of love that's available right now? What if you feel things on a frequency that most people can't pick up, and you're out here broadcasting on a channel nobody's tuned into? That fear sits with you. You carry it quietly because saying it out loud makes it feel more real. Here's something that took a long time to understand. Being unchosen right now is not the same as being unchoosable. Those are two completely different things. One is about timing, one is about worth, and somewhere along the way, you started confusing them. Every time someone didn't choose you, you subtracted something from yourself, like you were keeping a tally of your own unworthiness. Another person who left, another mark against you, another reason to believe the quiet fear that lives in your chest. But that's not what those moments were. Those moments were wrong fits, wrong timing, wrong people, who were carrying their own damage and didn't have room to hold yours too. People who were still figuring out who they were, people who weren't ready, people who were looking for something else. None of that is about you. None of it was ever really about you and the love you have inside you, the way you care, the way you give, the way you stay when most people would have already walked away. That is not a liability. That is not too much. That is rare. And rare things take longer to be recognized. They just do. Gold doesn't announce itself. It waits to be found by someone who knows what they're looking at. Being unchosen doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means the people who passed on you weren't capable of recognizing what they had. And that is a hard truth to sit with because your heart wants to put the blame on you. Because if it's your fault, then you have control. You can fix it. You can change, you can become whatever you need to become to finally be chosen, but you can't love someone into choosing you. You can't wait long enough or be good enough or patient enough to make someone ready when they're not. And the sooner you stop trying, the sooner you stop losing pieces of yourself, trying to be enough for people who were never going to stay, waiting with an open heart when the world keeps telling you to close it. That takes everything. That is the hardest and bravest thing a person can do. And you've been doing it without anyone telling you that it matters. It matters. So, if you're lying awake tonight asking the same question, what if no one ever chooses me? I want to tell you something. The question isn't whether you'll be chosen. The question is whether you'll stay open long enough to recognize it when it finally arrives. Because it will. Not because the world is fair, not because you've earned it, not because waiting always leads somewhere, but because the love you're capable of giving is real, and real love finds its way to real people eventually, even when it takes longer than it should. Maybe not on your timeline, maybe not in the way you imagined, maybe not with the person you expected, or in the season of life you planned for, but it finds its way. And when it does, it won't feel like relief. It won't feel like finally someone. It won't feel loud or dramatic or like a movie moment. It'll feel like calm, like something you didn't know was tense, finally letting go, like a question your body has been holding for years, quietly getting answered, like home. And you'll realize that every night you spent lying awake asking the question, you were still here, still open, still choosing to believe that something real was possible even when nothing around you proved it. And that's not nothing. That's not weakness. That is the bravest thing a person can do. Stay open when everything tells you to close. One day, someone will walk into your life and choose you, not because you finally became the right version of yourself, not because you waited long enough to deserve it, not in spite of who you are, but because of exactly who you are. Every quiet part of you, every complicated part, every part you've been hiding because you were afraid it was too much. They'll choose all of it. And if tonight the silence is too loud, if the question comes back louder than usual, if the wanting feels heavier than you know how to carry, just stay with it. Don't fight it. Don't shame yourself for still hoping after everything. Hoping means you haven't given up on yourself. And as long as you haven't given up on yourself, love hasn't given up on you either. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're not too much, you're just not there yet. And not yet is not never, not yet is just not yet.